I thought losing my husband after 40 years of marriage would be the worst pain I'd ever feel. But then, less than 2 weeks after the funeral, my daughter-in-law stood in my living room, pointed at the boxes and said coldly, "You've had enough time to grieve. Pack your things and leave." That sentence shattered me more than the funeral itself. My name is Helen. I'm 63 years old, recently widowed, and until that moment I believed I had a loving family, a son who adored me, a daughter-in-law I treated like my own, and a husband who promised me this house would always be my home. We had built our lives here. Every corner of that house whispered memories. Sunday morning pancakes, Christmas by the fireplace, laughter echoing through the hallway, and now silence. A cold, cruel silence. My son Daniel just stood there, eyes lowered, not saying a word, not defending me, not even looking me in the eye. I felt like I had died a second time, except this time no one came to mourn. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of them. I just nodded and went to my room. But I remembered something. A few nights before he passed, my husband John had taken my hand and said softly, "If something happens, go to the bank. There's something you need to see." At the time, I thought it was just his usual way of preparing for the inevitable. But now, as I looked around the house I was being forced out of, something didn't sit right. Why was Vanessa so eager to get rid of me? Why did Daniel look afraid? I was about to leave everything behind, but I had one last stop to make. And what I found at the bank changed everything. I left early the next morning before Vanessa or Daniel woke up. The house I'd once called home now felt like a hotel I'd overstayed in. I walked into the bank with nothing but my purse and my husband's last words echoing in my head. "If anything happens, go to the bank. There's something you need to see." I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Closure? A sign he hadn't forgotten me in the end? The banker, a young woman named Clara, looked up and gave me a soft, professional smile when I handed her my ID. "How can I help you today, Mrs. Thompson?" I told her I was there regarding any safe deposit box or joint account my husband might have left instructions for. She typed on her keyboard, paused, then leaned closer to the screen. "There was a transaction here about 9 days ago. A withdrawal. Large. By who?" I asked. She hesitated. Mr. John Thompson came in, but he wasn't alone. I felt the skin on my arms tighten. Who was with him? A woman. "Not you." She looked nervous. I probably shouldn't say more, but she signed in as a family financial advisor. Blonde hair. Very assertive. Called herself Vanessa Moore. I frowned. John never had a financial advisor. I handled everything with him. That title alone set off alarm bells. She'd gone to the bank with my husband, just days before he died? Did he look well? I asked. My voice cracked. Honestly, he looked tired. Confused, maybe. She did most of the talking. Clara stood up and whispered, "Do you want to see the security footage? I could maybe show you just a clip." I nodded and my heart pounded. There he was. My John. Frail, thinner than I remembered. Sitting quietly beside Vanessa as she signed forms, guided his hand, even whispered in his ear. He looked lost. Not like himself. He was trusting her. I left the bank in a fog. I wondered for a while before heading home. Sat on a park bench for nearly an hour, staring at the trees, trying to remember the last real conversation I'd had with John. Not about medication. Not about wills. Just real things. Like the weather. Or the sound of the radio on Sunday mornings. Back home I didn't unpack. I didn't even speak. I just sat in the room they hadn't touched yet, John's old office. The room smelled like old paper and aftershave. The curtains were still drawn. Dust clung to everything. It felt like stepping into a memory that hadn't realized time had passed. I opened every drawer, flipped through every envelope searching for something, anything that might explain why he'd let Vanessa into our finances like that. And then I saw it, folded beneath his old passport. A handwritten letter. Yellowed slightly at the edges. "Helen, if you're reading this, something went wrong." My breath caught. I was going to change the will. I should have done it sooner. I know Vanessa's been pushing Daniel about inheritance. I don't trust her. I see the way she looks at you when she thinks no one's watching. There's a copy of my true will, the one I meant to file, In the bottom cabinet drawer. Not the top one. Later, Marlene adds. He told me he wanted to call his lawyer. But Vanessa told him she'd handle everything, and begged him to rest. He looked too tired to argue. I think he believed her. I scrambled to the bottom drawer and found it. A single envelope marked, "Final will not filed." I read it once. Twice. My hands were shaking. He had left the house to me. Half of everything else to Daniel. The rest to a fund he wanted to start for widows. This wasn't the version Vanessa had mentioned. In the one she filed, everything had gone to Daniel. Which meant she had lied. Or worse. I sat in silence for a long time. My world had shifted again, but this time it didn't crumble. It sharpened. I was tired of grieving. Tired of being the quiet one. Tired of thinking silence was the higher road. This wasn't just grief anymore. It was betrayal. It was theft. And maybe, just maybe, it was something darker. Because if she could manipulate his will, what else could she have done? And why had Daniel let her? I looked around the office, the framed photo of our wedding, the little note he had once stuck on the bookshelf that said, "Don't forget the garlic." And I felt something shift in me. I wasn't leaving this house without answers. I looked at the will one more time, then placed it in my purse. It was time to see a lawyer. But first I needed to speak to someone who might know more. The nurse who took care of John in his final days. The nurse's name was Marlene. She'd been with us for the last 2 months of John's life, kind, gentle, soft-spoken. I remembered how she would hum while checking his vitals, or hold his hand quietly when the pain got bad. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. Maybe I hadn't wanted to. Maybe I hadn't wanted to open another door to more grief. But now I needed her. I called the private care agency and asked if she was available to meet. They were hesitant at first, citing policy. But when I said I just wanted to thank her properly, they gave me her personal number. When I called, she answered almost immediately. "Helen? Oh my goodness. I've been meaning to reach out. But I didn't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," I said. "Can we meet? Just for a coffee." She agreed. We met at a small diner off Main Street. It was quiet, half empty. The kind of place where conversations could float without being overheard. Marlene looked thinner, a little tired, but her smile was still warm. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. As we sat down. "I thought I was doing okay," I said. "But now, I don't know." She nodded. "Grief's strange like that. Hits in waves. You think it's gone and then it pulls you under again." I took a sip of my coffee, then placed the folded letter on the table between us. Her eyes scanned the handwriting, and her face stiffened slightly. "I think John knew something wasn't right," I said quietly. "He left me this. He mentioned Vanessa, and the will he meant to file. I found it." Marlene sat back in her seat. "I'm not surprised," she said softly. That stopped me cold. "What do you mean?" She looked around, then leaned in. There were things that didn't sit right with me. I wasn't going to say anything legally, ethically, I'm supposed to stay neutral. "But your husband?" Toward the end, he started getting nervous. Paranoid, almost. "About what?" He'd hide things. Not in a dementia sort of way, no confusion, nothing clinical. He was just scared people would take his words and twist them. He asked me once if I could witness a document he wanted to sign. But when I said I'd need a lawyer present, he said, "It's too late. They've already started." I felt my chest tighten. They. He never named names. But Vanessa was around a lot. More than Daniel. She would ask questions when John was half asleep. Quiet. Leading questions. Stuff about passwords, bank accounts, life insurance. I felt sick. "He was on heavy medication," Marlene continued. "Which he needed. The pain was unbearable some nights. But the dosage." She paused. "I never told the agency this, but one of the painkillers was going missing. Just a few pills here and there. Enough to dull, to cloud." My hands clenched under the table. "Could that?" I started. "I'm not saying she poisoned him," Marlene said quickly. "But she could have kept him sedated. Passive. Easy to influence." Silence stretched between us. "Did you ever confront her?" Marlene gave a sad smile. "I'm just the nurse. People like Vanessa, they know how to keep things polite." She never gave me anything I could report. But the way she hovered? The way she'd always double-check John's meds after I left the room. She shook her head. I knew something was off. I just didn't know what. I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted again. If Vanessa had manipulated him into signing things, while he was drugged, confused, vulnerable, then she hadn't just taken advantage. She'd violated every part of who he was. There was one more thing I needed to ask. Do you know if John ever spoke to Daniel about any of this? Marlene hesitated. I'm not sure. But I remember overhearing something. One night while I was closing up in the kitchen, I heard John say to Daniel, "You don't have to go along with her. You're better than this." That was it. Just that one sentence. But it was enough to snap something in me. Daniel knew. Or at least he suspected. And still he stood by her. Thank you, I said to Marlene, rising slowly from my seat. My coffee had gone cold. My grief had gone colder. She reached out and touched my hand. I'm sorry. I really am. I nodded. So am I. I walked out of the diner into the gray afternoon light. It had started to drizzle, soft, quiet, almost respectful. I stood there for a moment on the sidewalk, watching the rain hit the pavement. John had tried to protect me, even in his final days. Now it was my turn to protect his memory. I pulled the will from my purse. I was done playing quiet. It was time to speak to a lawyer. The lawyer's office sat above a bakery, which meant the whole place smelled like butter and burnt sugar. Oddly comforting given what I was about to do. I hadn't been to a lawyer in years. The last time was when John and I made our will, the original one. Back when we still believed that family meant something. I showed the receptionist the handwritten copy John had left me. She scanned it, raised her brows and said softly, "You'll want to speak with Mr. Carlyle. He's our estate specialist." Mr. Carlyle was in his 50s, sharp-suited but kind-eyed. The sort of man who listened more than he spoke. I liked him immediately. He read the letter first, then the will. He didn't interrupt. Just nodded slowly, tapped his pen against the desk, and finally said, "This changes everything." "How so?" I asked. "The version filed with the probate court, the one your son and daughter-in-law submitted, is a typed document, signed 3 days before your husband passed. No witnesses listed, just a notary stamp from a mobile service. Is that legal?" "It's suspicious," he said carefully. "Not necessarily illegal. But paired with this handwritten will, the letter, and your husband's state of health, it raises serious concerns." He looked up. "Do you believe your husband was coerced?" I didn't answer right away. I just said, "I believe he wasn't himself. And I believe someone made sure of that." He nodded again. "Then we need to act quickly. If this version is valid and provable, we can file a petition to challenge the existing will. What happens if the court agrees with us? You reclaim ownership of the house, potentially half the estate. And if foul play is suspected..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I handed him everything. The letter, the will, even my notes from the conversation with Marlene. His assistant made copies while I waited in silence, staring out the window at a mother walking her toddler past the bakery. They looked so clean, untouched by betrayal. For a moment I envied them. On my way out, Mr. Carlyle stopped me. "Mrs. Thompson, one more thing," he said. "I'd like to request the video footage from the bank. That could help. But I'll also need any digital documents submitted by your son or his wife." "I'll get them," I said. That night I went back to the house, not to live but to search. Daniel wasn't home. Vanessa was. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Forgot something," she said, smirking. I smiled politely. "Just gathering a few things from John's office." She shrugged. "Do whatever you want. It'll all be cleared out soon anyway." I moved through the house like a ghost. Quiet. Watching. Listening. In the office, I pulled open the filing cabinet, the one she probably never expected me to check again, and found exactly what I needed. A USB drive labeled Estate Docs, Final. I didn't even open it there. I slipped it into my pocket, thanked her for the hospitality, and left. At home I opened the files. Dozens of PDFs. Some clearly forged. One even had John's signature copied and pasted from another form. Sloppy. Arrogant. One file in particular stood out. A scanned agreement between John and a financial advisory assistant, signed by Vanessa, dated 2 weeks before he died. No witness. No legal representative. Just her. I forwarded everything to Mr. Carlyle. 10 minutes later he called me. This is more than enough to file. And if the court agrees that there was manipulation or fraud, he didn't have to say it again. The next morning, he filed a formal challenge with the probate court. Now it was public. Now it was real. And that's when everything started to shift. Daniel called me that evening. His voice was tight, anxious. Mom, why are you doing this? You know why. I didn't. I thought everything was handled. Handled by who? Vanessa. There was a long silence. She just wanted things to be fair. This isn't about fair. It's about truth. Your father trusted you, and you let her rewrite his legacy. I didn't know, he said, quiet but shaky. I thought she was helping. You thought wrong. He hung up without another word. I stared at the phone, hands trembling. He sounded like a child caught in something he didn't understand, or maybe didn't want to. Either way, it was too late now. I looked at the court filing Mr. Carlyle had sent me. My name was there, bold, clear, defiant. Helen Thompson, petitioner. There was no going back. The first court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. That gave me time. Time to gather what John couldn't say out loud. Time to prove that what happened to him wasn't just tragic. It was deliberate. Mr. Carlyle was already working on the bank subpoena, but I had another idea. I remembered something Vanessa once boasted about at dinner. Her habit of recording conversations on her phone. It helps me keep things straight, she said once. People lie. Recordings don't. That memory stayed with me. And now it might be the very thing that undoes her. I knew Vanessa kept her old iPhone in a drawer in the guest's bedroom, the one she never let Daniel touch. She had upgraded to a newer model just a few months ago, but something told me she hadn't wiped the old one. I waited until the house was empty. Daniel was at work, and Vanessa had driven to her sister's. I used the spare key I never gave back. The drawer was locked, but John's office still had the spare key taped under the desk, just like he always left it. Inside I found the phone. Dead battery. I plugged it in and waited. Minutes felt like hours. When it finally turned on, I went straight to the voice memos. There were dozens. Most labeled with dates. Some marked call. Others just with vague titles like kitchen or office. One, dated 8 days before John died, was titled simply, John Bedtime. Played it. His voice was barely above a whisper. Are you sure this is the right thing to do? Then hers, too sweet, too patient. You said you wanted Daniel to have the house, remember? That's all this is. Just a signature, John. You're so tired. Let's get this done and you can sleep. I don't remember saying that. You did. A few weeks ago. Don't you trust me? There was silence. Then the sound of pen on paper. My stomach twisted. Another file, this one from the next day, was even worse. Vanessa speaking on the phone, maybe to Daniel. He barely knew what he was signing. I had to put the pen in his hand. But it's done. Once the old woman's gone, the rest is ours. The old woman. She meant me. I downloaded both files and forwarded them to Mr. Carlyle. His response came within minutes. This is damning. The court can't ignore this. And if Daniel was on that call, he's complicit. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just sat by John's photo, holding his wedding band in my hand. I found them, John, I whispered. I found the truth. The next morning, Mr. Carlyle filed a request to submit the audio as supplemental evidence. The court approved it the same afternoon. From that moment, everything moved fast. Vanessa was served with a court summons. Daniel stopped answering my calls. The silence between us now felt like a wall. One I didn't build but could no longer ignore. But then something happened I didn't expect. Marlene called me again. There's something I forgot to tell you, she said. Actually, I wasn't sure if I should. What is it? The day before John passed, he asked me to help him record something. I thought it was just a message for you. But he seemed frantic. Did he say where it was? In the base of his oxygen machine. I taped it underneath like he asked. But when I came back the next day, it was gone. Gone. Vanessa had been there alone for an hour that morning. When I checked, the recorder was missing. I swallowed hard. What kind of recorder was it? A black Sony voice recorder. Tiny. Could fit in your hand. I thanked her and hung up. Another recording. One I never knew existed. And Vanessa had taken it. That night I confronted her. I knocked on their front door. She opened it, arms crossed, annoyed. What now? I know about the recorder, Vanessa. Her face didn't move. I want it back. Or I bring everything I have to the media. Your job. Your reputation. Gone. She laughed. You think anyone's going to believe some old woman with a grudge? I think the judge will. She stepped closer. You're bluffing. I leaned in, quiet. Play with me and you'll find out. Then I turned and walked away. Not because I was done, but because I wanted her to sweat. Because now for the first time she knew I wasn't afraid. 3 days after our confrontation, I received a letter. No return address. Just my name typed in neat black ink. Inside was a cease and desist notice from Vanessa's attorney, accusing me of slander, trespassing, and unlawful surveillance. I stared at the words, stunned. Then I laughed. It wasn't funny. Not really. But the absurdity of it, being accused of invading privacy by the very woman who manipulated a dying man, it was almost theatrical. I forwarded it to Mr. Carlyle. His response was calm as always. This is a scare tactic. She's trying to make you retreat. But it won't hold up in court. She's escalating, I said. Yes, he agreed. Which means she's nervous. And he was right. Because the next day Daniel showed up at my door. He looked thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. His shoulders slumped, like the weight of the world had settled on them. Can I come in? He asked. I didn't speak. I just stepped aside. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one he used to eat cereal at before school. Now he was 34, married, and breaking under pressure. I didn't know. He said softly. About the recordings. About the forged documents. I swear, Mom. I didn't know. But you knew something was wrong. He winced. Yeah. Then why didn't you stop it? She told me Dad changed the will on his own. That you were bitter, paranoid, and I believed her. He looked down. She said if I ever sided with you, she'd take our son and leave. I was scared, Mom. I froze. He buried his face in his hands. She was calm. Convincing. Said she wanted to protect me. That you were going to sell the house and disappear. I stayed quiet. Let him sit with the weight of his own betrayal. She told me you were planning to cut me out. Your father left you half, I said. And the rest to people who needed it more. Like widows. Like the woman I used to be. Before he made this house our home. He looked up, shame written all over his face. I want to make it right. You can start by testifying. His jaw tightened. She'll destroy me. Then don't let her. Later that evening, I received a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, low and unfamiliar. Is this Helen Thompson? Yes. My name is April. I saw your name mentioned in a court filing regarding Vanessa Moore. I sat up straighter. I'm listening. I used to be married to her brother. Before he died. There was a pause. She's not who she pretends to be. April told me things I never imagined. That Vanessa had changed her name at 19. After fleeing a legal battle with her father, a man she had sued for inheritance after her mother's death. She accused him of hiding assets, April said. Dragged him through court for 2 years. He died penniless. And when the ruling didn't go in her favor, she disappeared. I could barely breathe. She's smart. Strategic. Always finds the vulnerable man, then works her way in. Your husband wasn't her first. Why are you telling me this now? Because I recognize the pattern. And because you're the first person who's ever pushed back. April offered to send me the court records and her own affidavit. I thanked her. Hung up. Then just sat there. Pieces were falling into place. Vanessa wasn't just opportunistic. She was practiced. This was her method. Seduce control. Exploit trust. Rewrite legacy. But not this time. The next day, Mr. Carlyle and I reviewed the new evidence. This, he said, tapping the printed court record from April, this shows character pattern. It's not just about your husband anymore. It's about her history. What happens next? We submit this as part of a formal motion to admit character evidence. If the judge approves it, the jury will see the full picture. And if they don't? He looked at me calmly. Then we show them everything else. Daniel agreed to testify. He met with Mr. Carlyle, handed over text messages Vanessa had sent him during John's final weeks, messages urging him to trust her and not get involved. But it was one text in particular that sealed it. Don't worry about your dad. He won't even remember signing it. That night, I lay in bed thinking about John, about how he must have felt, watching his son drift away, watching his home slip through his fingers, watching a woman he didn't trust take control of everything he built. He hadn't just left me a will. He'd left me breadcrumbs, a trail, a quiet request. Finish what I couldn't, and I would, even if it meant facing her in court, even if it meant losing Daniel forever. Because sometimes the fight isn't about what's taken. It's about who you become when you take it back. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature but in tone. Clean walls, polished floors, faces carved in stillness. I sat on one side with Mr. Carlyle. Vanessa sat on the other with her lawyer, a younger man, all bravado and expensive shoes. Daniel sat in the middle, called as a neutral witness. He looked like a man unraveling, and in a way he was. When the judge entered, the room hushed like the air had thickened. We began. Mr. Carlyle laid out our case with precision. He presented the handwritten will, the audio recordings, the bank footage, the digital documents Vanessa had forged, and the court records from April, the woman who had known Vanessa long before any of us. Every piece fit together like threads sewn into a net. Her lawyer tried to fight it, called the audio inadmissible, claimed the alternate will was not properly executed, argued that John had changed his mind at the end. But then came Daniel. He took the stand slowly, nervously. Mr. Carlyle asked only a few questions, enough to reveal the truth without breaking him. Did your father ever tell you he changed the will on his own? No, Daniel replied. He didn't mention changing anything. Did you ever hear Vanessa speak to him about the estate? Daniel nodded slowly. She talked to him when he was sick, when he wasn't fully aware. She told me she was helping him, but I think she was helping herself. Then came the final blow. Mr. Carlyle played the recording of Vanessa saying, "Once the old woman's gone, the rest is ours." The jury was silent. The judge's face didn't change, but I saw it in her eyes. She had heard enough. 2 days later, the verdict came. The will Vanessa submitted was declared void. My husband's handwritten will was reinstated as the final, legally binding document. I kept the house, half the estate. The fund for widows would be honored, just as John wanted. And Vanessa? The judge didn't issue a sentence. This wasn't a criminal trial. But she did order an investigation into elder abuse and document fraud. But I chose not to press criminal charges. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I wanted peace more than punishment. She was escorted out of the courthouse, her face pale, her lawyer gone silent. As for Daniel, he came to me afterward. He stood in the parking lot, unsure if he should speak. Then quietly he did. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. "But I wanted you to know. I'm sorry." I looked at him. My son. The boy I raised. The man who had betrayed me then returned, not whole but honest. "Forgiveness," I said gently, "isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it most." He nodded. "What happens now?" I smiled softly. "Now? I start over. On my own terms." The house felt different afterward. Not because it had changed, but because I had. I redecorated John's office. Turned it into a small writing room. The fund he left for widows? I helped launch it, named it after his mother. Margaret's Hope. It wasn't much, but it gave other women what I nearly lost. The strength to fight back. Sometimes I still find letters he wrote me, tucked between old books or slipped inside jacket pockets. He had a habit of hiding love like treasure. And now, years later, I was still discovering him piece by piece. One afternoon, I found something behind a photograph in the hallway. A final note, folded small and nearly forgotten. Simply read. If you're reading this, Helen, it means you didn't let them win. And that means I can rest. I love you. I held it to my chest and stood there for a long time, feeling the silence settle around me. Not heavy, not hollow. Just quiet. Peaceful. We spend our lives building homes, brick by brick, memory by memory. But sometimes, the people we trust most try to burn them down. And when that happens, the strongest thing you can do is rebuild. Not for revenge, not for justice, but for yourself.